The galaxy was a serene place before Species X decided to mess with the wrong backwater system. Known for their cold intellect and calculating precision, Species X had spent millennia conquering planets, enslaving worlds, and breaking civilizations under their will. They didn't think twice when they came across Earth, seeing it as another primitive world full of weak creatures to dominate. They saw the humans as small, fleshy beings with laughably fragile bodies, no claws, no fangs, just squishy meat sacks stumbling around a wet, blue planet. Their technology was crude compared to the galactic standard, and their weapons were nothing more than sticks that threw metal. It was an easy target, a simple addition to the growing empire of Species X. The first ship arrived above Earth's atmosphere on a crisp night. Its presence was cloaked, unseen by the human military or satellites. It hovered there, silent, observing. They had planned to study the humans for a few days, maybe weeks, before sending their message of domination. But Species X was about to make a critical mistake. They underestimated what humans were truly made of. Day 1. The first contact with Earth wasn't a message of peace. Species X didn't believe in diplomacy when it came to primitives. Instead, they sent an EMP pulse that knocked out global communications, crippled satellites, and plunged the world into chaos in a matter of minutes. Across every continent, the lights flickered out, and the hum of modern life was replaced by darkness and silence. But the humans didn't panic the way Species X had expected. Instead, within hours, emergency response teams were mobilizing. In major cities, generators kicked in, and resourceful humans in remote areas started building fires, gathering food, and organizing local defenses. While Species X watched from above, calculating how best to break them, humanity was already proving one thing: they adapted fast. The pulse hadn't been strong enough to take down the military's most secure systems. In hidden bunkers and undersea bases, leaders of Earth's most powerful nations were already meeting, discussing the sudden attack. They didn't know who or what had hit them, but they knew one thing for sure: it was an invasion, and Earth had no plans to surrender. Day 3. The skies above Earth rippled as the first wave of invasion ships descended. Silent, sleek, and brimming with advanced technology, they broke through the atmosphere like sharks breaching the surface of a calm sea. The world below looked like easy prey, cities glowing dimly in the aftermath of the pulse, vulnerable and scattered. But Species X had never fought humans before, and humans, as they were about to discover, didn't go down easy. In a small town on the outskirts of the United States, the first ship landed. It was a scouting mission, intended to gauge resistance. They expected the humans to cower, or perhaps try some futile display of force with their primitive weapons. What they didn't expect was to be met with a hail of bullets and explosions. A local militia, made up of veterans, hunters, and a handful of survivalists, had been waiting. They didn't have high-tech weaponry or alien defenses, but they had guns, lots of guns, and more grit than Species X had ever encountered. As the first wave of scouts stepped off their ship, clad in sleek black armor, they were torn apart by a barrage of high-caliber rounds. The scouts, used to enemies who fell in line or begged for mercy, were thrown into chaos. Their armor could withstand energy blasts, but it wasn't built to stop kinetic force, something humanity had perfected over centuries of war. The bullets punched through their shields, their helmets, their cold, calculating brains. The humans didn't hesitate. They kept firing, kept pushing, kept killing until the alien ship was reduced to a smoking ruin, and every last scout was dead. It was the first battle in what would become humanity's longest, bloodiest war, but it wouldn't be the last. Day 7. By the end of the first week, Earth had mobilized. Nations that had been at odds for decades were suddenly united by one common goal: survival. The aliens had miscalculated again. They thought the humans would be fractured, easily divided, but they didn't understand human nature. When threatened, humans came together in ways that defied logic. In secret underground labs, scientists worked around the clock to reverse engineer alien technology. Military strategists, tacticians, and soldiers gathered to create a plan, not just to survive, but to fight back. They were outmatched, outgunned, and outnumbered, but they had one advantage: They were human, and humans had a long history of defying the odds. In the frozen wastes of Siberia, Russian forces intercepted an alien convoy. Using old-school guerrilla tactics, they ambushed the aliens, rigging the ground with IEDs and taking out their tanks with Molotov cocktails and stolen alien tech. The icy terrain, inhospitable to most species, was their greatest weapon. The aliens, unused to the cold, fell apart. The Russians dragged their frozen bodies back to their base for study. Meanwhile, in the deserts of the Middle East, a coalition of soldiers from across the region worked together to defend against an alien outpost. Using the cover of night, they moved like shadows, disabling the outpost's defenses and slaughtering the aliens in their sleep. Their prize, a fully functional alien ship, which they promptly flew to the nearest U.S. airbase for examination. And in the jungles of South America, the indigenous tribes banded together with the remnants of local military forces. They knew the land better than anyone. They set traps, poisoned rivers, and led the aliens into deadly ambushes. Species X's technology was useless against a foe that moved faster than their sensors could detect, that struck from the shadows and vanished without a trace. By the end of the week, the first victories were being reported across the globe. Humanity, against all odds, was holding its own. Day 14. Species X had never encountered a species like humanity before. Every time they thought they had the humans figured out, they were wrong. The humans were unpredictable. They fought with a ferocity that defied logic. They didn't just fight to survive. They fought to win, to destroy, to wipe their enemies off the face of the Earth. The leaders of Species X, safe in their orbiting command ship, were beginning to worry. This wasn't how the conquest was supposed to go. They had calculated every variable, considered every outcome. But they hadn't accounted for one thing: the human spirit. As reports of more human victories came in, Species X made a decision. If they couldn't conquer humanity, they would annihilate it. Day 15. The command ship of Species X, floating in the cold, indifferent void of space, was a marvel of engineering, a sleek, black fortress of logic and order. It had watched over countless conquests, orbiting above defeated worlds, and its occupants had never known defeat. They didn't even understand the concept. Their kind had long believed in total, calculated control over everything they encountered. Their systems ran flawlessly, their plans executed with precision. But now, for the first time in millennia, there was chaos. The council chamber of the command ship hummed with subdued tension, a sound unfamiliar to its occupants. High Commander Venus, the leader of this operation, stood rigid, gazing out the massive window that showcased the blue and green orb below Earth. He wasn't a creature of emotions, nor were his subordinates. But if Species X had something akin to fear, Venus was feeling a close approximation of it. "This world defies our projections," he said, his voice mechanical, almost robotic. "Humanity should have broken by now. They have not," answered one of his advisors, tapping rapidly on a data terminal. "They are evolving too quickly. Their combat strategies are unpredictable. They adapt to every tactic we deploy." Venus turned, his multifaceted eyes narrowing. "Adapt. We are superior in every measure. They are an evolutionary anomaly, nothing more than a violent accident." The advisor hesitated. "Perhaps, Commander, but accidents sometimes survive. Survival." The word hit Venus like an insult. Species X had long since eradicated the need to survive. They had transcended mere existence, conquering star systems, consuming resources, enslaving populations. Everything had its place in their grand plan. But the humans didn't fit. They didn't act like any of the other species that Species X had encountered. "They're like predators," the advisor continued, as if voicing the commander's unspoken thoughts. "They don't just fight. They hunt. They enjoy it. Enough." Venus snapped, his voice cold and calculated. "If they will not be broken, then they will be eradicated." He turned back to the window, staring down at Earth, that rebellious speck in the vastness of the universe. This planet, this insignificant species, would learn the price of defying an empire. Day 17. Species X's plan for annihilation began quietly, almost unnoticed by the people of Earth. The first sign of trouble came from the oceans. Massive disturbances were reported in the Atlantic and Pacific, strange whirlpools forming where there shouldn't have been any, accompanied by an eerie, unnatural hum that rippled across the planet's surface. Coastal cities began to panic. Scientists scrambled to understand what was happening, but there was no clear explanation. Was it seismic activity? A magnetic anomaly? Then, the first city fell. A small coastal town in the South Pacific, a place few outside of its borders had ever heard of, vanished beneath the waves in less than an hour. One moment it stood under the midday sun, and the next it was gone, swallowed by the ocean as if the Earth itself had opened its mouth and taken a bite. Thousands of lives were lost without warning. Across the globe, news outlets struggled to make sense of the disaster, but soon it became clear that this was no natural event. The oceans weren't rebelling against humanity. Species X was. Deep beneath the waves, massive alien machines had been deployed, designed to manipulate the planet's oceans and tectonic plates. They were engineering Earth's destruction, piece by piece, from the inside out. The aliens didn't want a war anymore. They wanted a clean slate, and they would take it by force. But once again, they underestimated humanity's response. Day 20. The second phase of invasion, environmental warfare, was in full swing. Species X's machines continued to disrupt Earth's natural processes, creating superstorms, shifting tectonic plates, and unleashing tidal waves on coastal cities. Humanity was facing extinction not through direct combat, but through the slow, steady collapse of its environment. It was a different kind of war, one that was far more insidious. But humans are nothing if not resourceful. In an underground bunker in the Nevada desert, a group of scientists, military leaders, and engineers were working around the clock to develop a counterstrike. They called themselves Project Hades, a name chosen for its symbolic weight. If the aliens wanted to turn Earth into hell, humanity would drag them down with it. The lead scientist, Dr. Mara Reyes, stood over a holographic table, studying the data from the latest attack. The Pacific Ocean was now a war zone, with waves as tall as buildings slamming into the coasts. But she wasn't focusing on the destruction. No, Mara was focused on the machines, the alien devices deep beneath the ocean surface. These things are massive, she said, her voice tense but steady. But they aren't invincible. They're anchored to the seafloor, and if we can disrupt their power source. How the hell do we get to them? Interrupted General Harris, a grizzled man with more combat experience than most people had years on this planet. You want to send a team down there with a wrench and a prayer? Not quite, Mara replied, pulling up another hologram. We're going to nuke the bastards. Harris raised an eyebrow. Nukes won't work. Not underwater. Not at that depth. The pressure alone. We're not talking traditional nukes, Mara cut in. This is something we've been developing for years. Something we never thought we'd need. Until now. She tapped a command on the console, and the hologram shifted to show a sleek, metallic device. Small, but bristling with advanced tech. This is the Neptune Protocol. It's a hybrid between a nuclear device and an EMP. When detonated at the right depth, it will create a shockwave that disables the machines and any electronics within a 100-mile radius. It'll crush their infrastructure and leave the oceans intact. Harris stared at the device, then back at her. And you're sure this will work? Mara met his gaze, her eyes hard. It has to. Day 24. The Neptune Protocol was launched. In a coordinated effort, submarines from several of Earth's remaining fleets, retrofitted with stolen alien technology, descended into the ocean's depths. It was a suicide mission for most of the crews. There was no guarantee they would survive the journey down or the return trip. But they went anyway, knowing that if they didn't, there wouldn't be an Earth left to come back to. As the submarines approached the alien machines, the tension was palpable. Alien drones patrolled the waters, their eerie lights casting ghostly glows through the deep. The humans had to move fast, avoid detection, and plant the devices without being destroyed. One wrong move, and it would all be over. But humans were good at making impossible plans work. In the dead of night, the Neptune devices were deployed. One by one, they were planted at the bases of the alien machines, deep beneath the surface. And one by one, they detonated. The result was spectacular. Across the Pacific and Atlantic, the ocean itself seemed to roar in defiance as massive shockwaves tore through the deep, ripping apart the alien machines like they were toys. The superstorms stopped. The waves calmed. The machines went dark. Humanity had won a crucial battle, but the war was far from over. Species X had watched the destruction of their machines in stunned silence. They had seen humans adapt, they had seen them fight, but they had never seen them win like this. The plan to annihilate Earth's environment had failed, and now the aliens had no choice. They would have to meet humanity head-on the battlefield. The humans had made their message clear. They wouldn't go quietly into the night. And now, Species X was about to find out exactly what humans were capable of. Day 30. The command ship of Species X was a place that had never known defeat. Until now, the destruction of their machines in Earth's oceans had sent shockwave, not just across the planet, but through the collective consciousness of their empire. Species X was accustomed to precision, control, and the efficient subjugation of all life forms they encountered. But humans were nothing like any species they had ever conquered before. In the dark, sterile corridors of the ship, silence reigned. Silence, save for the low hum of technology that maintained the ship's life support and operational systems. High Commander Venus stood in the center of the war room, flanked by holographic projections of the battle down on Earth. The humans were winning battles, striking at alien weaknesses in ways that defied every calculation made by Species X's vast network of AI strategists. How have they managed to disable our machines? Venus demanded. His voice, usually a calm monotone, now carried an edge of something he refused to acknowledge: panic. The advisors surrounding him shifted uncomfortably. We underestimated their resilience, one finally admitted, tapping at a data screen nervously. Their tactics are primitive but effective. Their adaptability is beyond our projections. Enough! Venus snarled, his composure cracking. Adaptability is irrelevant in the face of overwhelming force. We will not be defeated by such primitive creatures. Prepare the final assault. The room fell silent again. The final assault. That meant total war. No more subtle tactics. No more attempts at environmental destruction. It was time to bring the full weight of Species X's military down on the humans' heads and crush them once and for all. Venus turned to the hologram of Earth. They want to fight, he muttered. Then we will bring the fight to them. Day 31. Across the globe, humanity was catching its breath. The oceans had calmed, and for the first time in weeks, the world wasn't on the verge of environmental collapse. But no one was under the illusion that the war was over. Humanity had bought itself time, but Species X wasn't done yet. In the skies above Earth, the first signs of the coming storm appeared. Massive warships, each the size of small cities, began to descend from orbit. They blotted out the sun in places, casting ominous shadows over the landscape below. The ships were sleek, black, and covered in glowing alien glyphs. From their underbellies came smaller craft, fighters, bombers, troop transports, all pouring down like locusts to swarm the surface of the planet. On the ground, humanity was ready. In military bases across the world, soldiers stood at attention, their faces grim but determined. They had seen the devastation the aliens could bring, but they had also learned something important. The aliens could bleed, and that meant they could die. In the U.S., General Harris surveyed the preparations from a command post in Colorado. The underground facility had been built to withstand nuclear strikes, and now it was serving as the central hub for Earth's united military forces. Screens around him showed live feeds from battlefronts around the globe. Tanks rolled into position, fighter jets scrambled into the air, and soldiers armed with a mix of conventional and alien tech-enhanced weaponry prepared for the fight of their lives. "General, we've got incoming," a young officer called out. Multiple alien craft descending over North America, Europe, and Asia. Estimated groundfall in 30 minutes. Harris grunted, his cigar clenched between his teeth. "Good," he said. "Let's show these bastards what a real fight looks like." "Approaching orbit," Ace said, his voice steady. "They haven't spotted us yet, but that's gonna change real quick." Mara nodded. "Just get us close. Once we're inside their hangar, we'll do the rest." As the transport neared the alien command ship, its cloaking systems kept them hidden. For now, the massive black fortress loomed ahead, its surface bristling with alien weaponry and defenses. The Doomsday device hung in space nearby, tethered to the ship by a series of massive cables that pulsed with energy. It was a heart, and the ship was the body. "We're in position," Ace said. "Hang on to something." The transport swooped in, darting toward one of the command ship's hangar bays. Alarms blared as the ship's sensors finally detected the intruders. But it was too late. The human transport slammed into the hangar, skidding across the deck as soldiers poured out, weapons at the ready. Inside the alien command ship, the team moved with precision. They had trained for this. Every corridor, every door, every corner was mapped out. They knew where the Doomsday device was located and how to reach it. But they also knew that Species X wouldn't let them reach it without a fight. Alien soldiers, their cold, black armor gleaming in the sterile light, moved to intercept. But the humans were faster. Plasma rifles, stolen from the dead hands of alien soldiers, spat green bolts of energy, cutting down the attackers with brutal efficiency. Grenades exploded, filling the corridors with smoke and fire. The humans pushed forward, cutting through the alien ranks like a knife through butter. For all their advanced technology, Species X had never been good at close-quarters combat. They relied on precision, on distance, on overwhelming technological superiority. But the humans had learned something during this war. There was no substitute for sheer, unrelenting violence. Mara led the way, her plasma rifle slung across her back as she planted charges along the walls of the corridor leading to the Doomsday device. The team had a simple plan: reach the device, set the charges, and get out before the whole place went up in flames. As they reached the core of the command ship, where the device was housed, they encountered the final line of defense, a towering alien mech, its armored form bristling with weapons. It stood between them and the device, its cold, calculating eyes locking onto the humans. "Take it down," Mara shouted. The team opened fire, but the mech was ready. Energy shields flared to life, deflecting the plasma bolts and returning fire with devastating force. One of the soldiers was hit, his body vaporized in an instant, but the humans didn't stop. They charged forward, flanking the mech, using every piece of cover they could find. Ace, his face grim with determination, lobbed a grenade at the mech's feet. The explosion staggered the machine, and for a brief moment, its shields flickered. That was all Mara needed. She darted forward, planting an explosive charge on the mech's leg before diving behind cover. "Clear out," she yelled. The explosion ripped through the mech's leg, sending it crashing to the ground in a shower of sparks. The team moved in, finishing it off with concentrated fire until the alien machine lay in ruins. The Doomsday device. The team reached the heart of the ship, where the Doomsday device pulsed with energy. It was massive, larger than they had expected, and brimming with power. Mara and the scientists immediately got to work, setting charges along its surface, carefully avoiding the delicate systems that could trigger it prematurely. "How much time do we have?" Ace asked, watching the door for any more alien reinforcements. "Not long," Mara replied, sweat dripping down her face. "Just a few more minutes." But they didn't have a few more minutes. The doors to the chamber burst open, and High Commander Venus entered, flanked by his elite guard. His cold, insect-like eyes locked onto the humans, and he raised a sleek, alien weapon. "You think you can stop us?" Venus hissed, his voice dripping with contempt. "You are vermin. This galaxy belongs to us." Mara stood tall, her hand on the detonator. "It doesn't belong to anyone. Not anymore." Venus raised his weapon to fire, but Mara was faster. She slammed her hand down on the detonator, and the charges exploded. The end. The explosion tore through the command ship, ripping the doomsday device apart in a blinding flash of light. The tethered cables snapped, sending the weapon spiraling into space, where it detonated in a silent, fiery explosion. The blast sent shockwaves through the alien fleet, disabling their systems and leaving them vulnerable. On Earth, humanity watched as the alien ships, once so invincible, flickered and went dark. The war was over. Humanity had won. In the wreckage of the command ship, Mara Reyes lay in the rubble, her body broken, but her spirit unbowed. She had done it. They had done it. Against all odds, humanity had survived. As the rescue team approached, she allowed herself a small, grim smile. Species X had just found out what humans were made of.